2008. Thank you for
Can you have
coming
attention
tonight.
here, please?
I want to give special thanks to Stamps Chiropractic and especially Sherry Bagley. Thank you for
Thank you,
coming and
Sherry.
opening up.
You're welcome.
And we always try to give our support to the people that help our mission. And our mission is to educate our members and the public about living an organic, sustainable, and natural lifestyle. However, and here comes the disclaimers. I love these.
He actually does one of these?
Yeah, I do them all the time. Disclaimer. The information in any literature provided or products recommended is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Advice and suggestions offered here tonight are the opinions of the individual speaking and do not constitute legal or medical advice. Do not discontinue medical care without first consulting with a qualified health care provider. This information is provided under the Constitution of the United States of America.
Damn, where'd you get that?
I've got a whole page of disclaimers. If you want to become a member, I have a membership list. All you have to do is sign your name. If you do not wish to be a member, please do not sign. And here's a pen.
So I'm already here, but I still sign.
Yes, please. We'd like to know who's been coming. We do not share our phone numbers or email addresses with anyone except those who volunteer to make reminder calls, and so far that's just been me. Our meetings last 2 hours. First hour is devoted to learning about organic gardening. Thus, Mr. Bruce Newman is here tonight. And our second hour is devoted to organic and sustainable living. We always start with introductions. My name is David Will. I'm the founder of the Organic Living Club and Chief Hellraiser. Excuse me.
Chief Cook and Bottle Wash.
That's right. We'll start over here with another David. Introduce you.
This doesn't work, then we'll do something else. See if that'll work. Thanks. I brought my machine, but I think his is gonna work. Yeah, it is. That is so cool. I love it when things work. Well, it won't go backwards. What am I gonna do? Is it going backwards?
Just keep going forwards.
All right, I'll skip the first page. Don't worry about it. Why go organic? Why are we talking about organic fertilizers? What is going on with the earth and the way we're treating it? This guy, Liebig, started back in the 1800s, and he's the man that decided that nitrogen, NPK, was the thing to do to grow everything. And he really unintentionally started chemical fertilizer as we know. Back then he didn't know you could make it from petroleum. Do you all realize that all the fertilizer you're using, if you don't go organic, is made from petroleum? About 7 to 11% of everything we bring into the nation is converted to fertilizer to go on our fields. So even though we're doing about 20-some% of our pollution is cars, another 20 or 25 is our cows belching methane, and I don't want to get into that. But industry, the agriculture department also puts out about as much as automobiles do, mostly because of the way we treat our agriculture. The third most, one of the biggest inputs is the fertilizer. So when you add up the fact that not only do we use the fertilizer that is chemically made, we bring it in trucks, and we make it from petroleum. When you add that all together, a significant amount of the problem in petroleum that we have is agriculture. Now, I don't want to stop feeding us. Don't misunderstand me. Liebig came up with this idea. This is where it gets to be organic, you didn't know it. I love his barrel, and what he tried to illustrate here is here's all your zinc and magnesium and coppers and borons and everything that you want. And his point of this barrel was you can only have soil as good as the weakest mineral that your plant needs. In this case, he happened to choose nitrogen, and nitrogen was down here. Well, that's as much as that barrel will fill up. So if we give it more nitrogen, we get up here, then the next weakest thing may be calcium. Do you see what I mean? And what we're trying to do here is keep our soils, our life force in balance. And we don't do that when we use NPK. When you put NPK out year after year after year, where does it get boron? Where does it get copper? Where does it get manganese? Where does it get magnesium? Nowhere. Because that bag has none of that in there. So as you use up and keep putting more nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium on the soil, but you don't re-energize the soil with the other minerals, this barrel keeps getting lower staves. You see what I mean? Then let's say you could bring this nitrogen all the way up to here. You can put enough nitrogen out there, but it's not going to work because what are we going to do about calcium? We haven't had any of it. Do you see the difference? And so what we want to do when we naturally, and the word organic's been beat to death. I'm always scared of it sometimes. When we naturally re-energize our soils, we put all those minerals back in, we put all that organic matter. Remember, the one thing that we don't put in when you use synthetics ever is carbon, is sugar. Okay? That's where we're missing it. We're not putting organic matter back on the soil. The Rio Grande Valley, when they started growing vegetables and fruits down there, mostly fruit, the average amount of organic matter in the soil was in excess of as much as 7 or 8%. Kay Chandler now owns Texas Plant Soil Lab. He can't find any soil in the valley that has 0.5% organic matter anymore. It's gone.
Oh, they are?
They're growing those fruits hydroponically. They're forcing what they need to grow those fruits in there, but there's no value left in the soil at all. We've just eaten it up because we didn't replace organic matter. Let's see if I can make this work. This ought to be a real challenge. I don't know why this is not going to do this. It doesn't matter. Here you go, folks.
I think it may be because you're sitting on top of that.
You think it is?
We had that same problem.
Yeah, let's just set this. If this don't work, it's all right. I can do it. Let's see if this works. No, it's not going to do it. There it is. Okay.
Point it at the projector.
Oh, yeah, that'll work. What is nutrient pollution? The level of nutrients, the nitrates, phosphorus, and fresh water. What we're doing, folks, you have to read this. As of last year, there was 7,900 square miles of the Gulf of Mexico that was physically dead. It had such low oxygen that animals couldn't live in it. Now we have a new one to contend with. We just found a 377 square mile area off the coast of Texas that's dead. Now when we say it's dead, you go out there in your boat, you go around, you still see a fish. You think everything's normal. You know what's dead? The bottom 6 feet. Well, where do our shrimp come from? Where do our mollusks come from? Where do the feeder fish all survive? They all survive down there underneath, and we've killed it. The oxygen level is below 0.04. Animals need 0.06 parts per million basically to survive. And this is all from nutrient pollution. It's not poison, it's not pesticides and herbicides, although I have my issues with those. It's that we're putting too much nitrogen and too much phosphorus, and in some cases too much potassium, all along the Mississippi River, and now all along the San Antonio River and the Brazos River and the Nueces River, and we're pouring it into one little cesspool that used to be one of the most beautiful gulfs in the world called the Gulf of Mexico. And we're killing the water that we survive on. We've got to quit it. We have got to quit. Our method was, yes.
I hear something on the radio about the Medina River, the Dos Rios.
Mm-hmm.
The water's cleaner before it comes in than when it goes out.
That's right. It's absolutely amazing what we're doing to our rivers. And there's 1,400 rivers, I think the real exact number is 1,420 rivers in the United States today that, especially if you're a woman that's going to get pregnant, you have a fetus, or you ever want to have a child, you shouldn't even walk in the water. You should never eat the fish. You should never let your children play in the water, especially if they're neonates before they're 3 years old. 1,400 rivers in our country that we've poisoned to the point that it's dangerous to approach them. There's something wrong with a society, with a group of people that as intelligent as we are, that we are not able to prevent that. My brother worked for Dow Chemical, the Colorado River, is that the one that goes down there? Between Dow and the Gulf of Mexico when he was working there,
River.
the Brazos,
Yes.
didn't have a living organism. Mosquitoes couldn't even live in it, and they breathed from the air. That's how poison it was. You know what it cost Dow to do that every day? $1,000 a day variance to kill 13 miles of river. At what point do we rebel and say we can't keep doing this to our environment? I am a global warming nut. I had a big fight with a guy last night that doesn't think the world's getting any warmer. Well, I put him in my ostrich case. If you want to bury your head and not look, folks, it's changing. Now, we can fight all day about how much we contribute versus how much is contributed by Mother Nature, but it's changed. I drove by yesterday at my home. This couldn't have been more poignant. And for those of you that don't know, I have a pet vulture. She lives at my house free, but she comes every evening and sleeps on my roof and follows my car and eats at my house. She's been there 4 years. So whenever I see vultures, I'm really aware of vultures. I'm looking at a field on the way to my house, and there's 2 black vultures and a turkey vulture there. And then out of the sky comes a Mexican eagle, a caracara, and takes the food from them and runs off with it. What is the indicator of that? 50 years ago, the most astute Audubon student in the hill country would have never seen a caracara in Kendall County, Texas. They're adjusting. They're learning to what our nature as our global warming changes, our global change. I don't want to use global warming because that almost sounds comfy, doesn't it? Yeah, if you lived in Nebraska, damn, global warming sounds like it's a great thing. But it's changing. I had my brother-in-law here. He came to hunt, and the last day he was here, a kid of parents flew over my house in Comfort, Texas. 6 conures, and I knew because I lived in South America for a couple of years, and I heard the sound, and they came over and they kidded, and they redid and kidded, then they went up and left. I don't know where they came from, but things are changing. The green parrot that was never coming into the United States now lives regularly in Brownsville and McAllen, and is now a regular inhabitant of Kingsville, 100 miles north of Mexico. So don't us think we know. Watch what the wildlife's doing. Watch what the plants are doing, and you're going to see things are changing. Anyway, back to pollution. You got me on my soapbox, and I shouldn't do that. 40% of the nitrogen pollution and 30% of the phosphorus in the United States is all from agriculture. I love agriculture. I'm in the business. But we cannot keep putting out more than the world can handle. I was a teacher for years, and my summer job was a water quality analyst for Kendall County, Texas. You know why? Because you don't make enough as a teacher to feed the kids in the summer. And I was called one morning to go test a well in Kendall County, just where Kendall and Kerr County come together, the Ray Ranch, to be exact. And they didn't ask why, or I didn't ask why. I just got up in the morning, went and tested the water. I took it to the Upper Guadalupe River Authority, actually Upper Colorado, UCRA. In about 2 hours, Charlie Wiedenfeld called me and asked me where I got the water from. I said, why? He says, well, it's not water, it's fertilizer. I said, what do you mean? He said, there's so much nitrogen in this that you could fertilize fields with it. So I asked him why they had asked me to go out and get the sample. The reason is, the Ray family had a 3-month-old baby that turned blue overnight and damn near died. She had nitrogen narcosis. They weren't nursing their baby. They were using water out of their well to make her formula. They had put so much nitrogen on their fields over the year that the well was totally infected with nitrogen to the point, I don't know if you know how nitrogen narcosis works, but all the little cells it's supposed to hold oxygen couldn't because they were full of nitrogen, and the baby was suffocating while it drank its own formula. When, at what point do we figure out, folks, more is not better? More doesn't mean that that's what we need to do to, am I going to get to do this? Oh, why nothing ever works for me. There you go. Okay, now we got it. Now we got it. Give me some numbers. I don't want to do this. All my new shows don't have these numbers, but I happen to bring this because they had mentioned to me about pesticides. This is a couple years old. At least 350 million pounds of cancer-causing pesticides, 470 million pounds of pesticides that cause genetic damage, 280 million pounds of pesticides that are reproductive problems, 215 million pounds of pesticides that are endocrine disruptors, and that's way up. This is about 1999 or 2000. 130 million pounds of pesticides that are neurotoxins. They end up in our soil, our water, and of course adversely impact us, the wildlife, and everything around us. Matter of fact, look where this number is. This is 10 years ago. These numbers have all increased. We haven't gotten smart enough to change any of it. Folks, we're slowly poisoning ourselves. Asthma in children at the turn of the century was about 6% of the population in the United States. Asthma in 2007 in newborn children was 16% of the population. Tell me we're not affecting them. Do I have the right answer about which poison it is? About what we're doing to the air? No. You go to a doctor. For those of you who don't know, I was a certified ophthalmic technician. I worked for doctors for 8 years. I worked in the hospital. I know a little about it. I don't claim to be a doctor, nor do I claim to even be a great nurse. But one day Dr. Guerra, I worked for Michael Guerra, called me. He said that we had to remove an eyeball from a guy that got struck down at Nick's Hospital in San Antonio. And I was his assistant. I was his grunt. I handed the instruments, and that's what I sort of found out. And I went down there very early in the morning, and I went in and came out about 10 o'clock. We were waiting on this guy, and I went into the emergency room, which I illegally parked at because it was an emergency, and it was full. It was more full than this room. There were people standing everywhere and sitting everywhere. And I happened to know the girl's name. I'd worked down there a few times. I said, Nancy, what's going on? She said, oh, it's a smog alert day. I said, what do you mean? She said, oh, whenever we get smog alert days, we fill the rooms because everybody can't breathe. And they bring in their grandparents, and in many cases their children. And they come in to get air, and they come in to get shots, and they come in hoping to God that they don't lose their relatives from bad air. This is in San Antonio, Texas. So I went back. We had to wait. When you take an eye out, you have to go back and make sure the guy doesn't bleed to death. I'm sorry. So I had to wait. So by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm ready to go, and I go out, and the room is still full. Full over, I mean, sitting like and standing around full of people with little tubes in their noses and everything. And what the point is this. I go out through the emergency exit, and I'm parked illegally in the emergency parking lot. I've never seen so many SUVs. There was a couple of Hummers. These people that are protecting their children and protecting their grandparents have no idea they're also ruining the air that's causing the asthma that their children and their grandparents are dying from. We've disconnected ourselves. We're no longer in touch with the world around us. That was just ludicrous to me. It just struck me like somebody hit me with a hammer. Come on, folks. I didn't see any, Kias. I drive a Kia. I saw gas-guzzling, polluting automobiles, and all these people are in there trying to protect their children and their grandparents. I'm sorry, there's something wrong with that image to me. Is this going to work this time?
To do the projector.
I know. Oh, there it is. I will tell you about this. Then I promise we'll get on to the good side. Atrazine is in more than trouble than ever. Atrazine is the #1 weed and feed in the nation. #1 salesperson for is Scott's Bonus S. Now they have Scott's Bonus S Plus. I don't know what the plus is, but I don't think it's very good. Plus is not necessarily positive. This kills your trees. It kills your dogs. There's a good study going on with Dr. Dan Kirby. And he's looking at a number of pets that have been through now dying of liver failure. And invariably, the livers are full of atrazine. Don't weed and feed. The one good thing about even the non-chemical or the chemical guys, the Jerry Parsons of the world, I love to pick on Jerry, he agrees with us. Weed and feed's not a good idea. When you're weeding, you shouldn't be feeding, and when you're feeding, you shouldn't be weeding. I don't care if you're chemical or you're organic. This is a stupid idea. We're the only major first world country in the world that allows atrazine to be used. We're using over 70 million pounds a year. In essence, all of us can get a quarter pound of atrazine just for ourselves. Incidentally, a quarter pound is enough to kill several people. Don't use weed and feeds. And above all, don't deal with atrazine. It's just one of my pet peeves. Here was some more now. Oh, did I go the wrong way? I did. I'll learn how to use this finally. This is a fight and I love my friend Malcolm Beck. But Malcolm still thinks Roundup's okay. I don't. Roundup has proved to be an endocrine disruptor. Roundup has been studied in a number of places and is, if it doesn't do anything else, let's pretend that it's perfect, other than it is really detrimental to the health of the soil. It kills a tremendous number of the microbes that we need for our soil to be vital. So even if it doesn't hurt us, and I think it does, Roundup, we've got to find a better source of a way to kill weeds.
I went up to that convention up there in Nacogdoches, but on the way back, I stopped at the Tyler, Texas.
Tyler, Texas.
But they have the Tyler preserve there.
Yeah.
And they said they don't use Roundup because it causes the frogs to be deformed.
What it does is, you're absolutely right. Roundup is, as we've discovered, is a disruptor of a lot of beneficial funguses. Our frog and salamander populations are dropping by precipitous levels from a fungus. That's the biggest single reason. Well, guess what? When you have beneficial funguses to control it, then the fungus that hurts the frogs and the salamanders are not able to take over. But when you put things out like Roundup, it suppresses the beneficial fungi, did I say that right? And the frogs and the salamanders are in tremendous trouble, especially in Iowa and Wisconsin, where the most concentrated uses, because of the crops they grow, are using Roundup. Roundup, I'm sorry, again, it's not legal in EU, in the European Union, or in most of Asia, but because of the pressure that the government gets here, we're allowed to sell this stuff free will. You can go buy all you want. You can buy enough to kill the whole neighborhood if you want. I won't keep you on this except to look at a few numbers, okay? What we're looking at is organically grown and non-organically grown, and I get tired of everybody saying, well, it doesn't make any difference. If you look at the calcium and phosphorus and magnesium and things, there's potassium, iron, look at the difference in, well, let's just take a look at a few of them. Snap beans, organically grown, non-organically grown. Look at the numbers without me pushing this on you. And you're going to find out that indeed, things that are organically grown are better for you. There was a big fight about that. The ones that this chart doesn't even show, no, we'll go on from this. What it doesn't show is the phytochemicals and the flavonoids and the things that we've now found out, though, is at least as important to the health of our bodies as vitamins are. Vitamins we learned vitamins a long time ago. Tomatoes is an ideal example, since it's one of the most common fruits we eat. Call it a vegetable if you want. The difference in the number of healthy phytochemicals and flavonoids in a tomato grown organically versus one grown commercially is literally off the scale. And it's not whether I do it or A&M does it or somebody else. It just does not get those protective phytochemicals if it's grown with chemicals and pesticides. Now why, one might ask. You know, we never thought plants have an immune system, but they do. When you get a plant that gets bit by a bug, it starts putting out phytochemicals to protect itself. It puts out flavonoids and it even puts out some pheromones that tell other plants near it that haven't been bitten by the bug, hey, you need to protect yourself because there's some bugs coming in, whatever you want to call a bug. Well, the very same thing that protects that plant, there's the same things that protect our bodies. We use those. We've evolved to use those. So when we think that we grow everything sterile, a Miracle-Gro and pesticide, that plant doesn't have to battle anything. It doesn't put out anything to take care of itself. Well, it also doesn't put out anything to take care of you. That's how it works. And we're learning more and more. We're, I think, probably still on the edge of a true education of how much we get from the plants that we eat. If I had to tell you one thing, we're going to get into what I was supposed to talk about tonight, and it's fertilization. If I had to give you one thing, and you couldn't buy anything else to just start off with, I would tell you to go get some molasses, either dry or wet. And I'll tell you how you can prove it to yourself. Get a gallon of molasses from Michael that you would ordinarily eat, or a quart. So go get a quart. And put 2 or 3 ounces in a gallon of water, and go and wash, pour your name into your soil where your lawn is. And go back in a week. Your name will be written on the lawn. It'll be so much greener than the rest of the lawn that you can read it. And I almost guarantee you that 90 out of 100% of you can do that. Why? Because we've taken all the carbon, we've taken all the sugar, we've robbed the soil of everything that's vital by only using NPK, and this stuff is starving for it. So when you pour that on, those guys go to work immediately, and you get your name written in the lawn. Now, the good news is, if you do it right and you get it caught up, one day you're gonna go out there and pour the molasses and it won't do anything. You'll say, oh, it's not working. No. You've now built up the level of the microbes so that the molasses is no longer a catalyst. You see what I mean? When I first went to Betsy Ross's, which is one of the best cattle raisers here in the state, she raised grass-fed cattle east of us. You could look across your fields, and everywhere that there was mounds of green grass, and they'd be spotted. You know what they were? They were the cows urinated and deposited their goods. Well, the soil was in such need that that was the only place the grass grew really green. Now she's been putting about 5 to 7 gallons of molasses on her soil for 10 years. She's been using a number of different compost teas. She has actually put out some composted material. Now you can't, pardon my French, you can't tell where the cow went, because the whole level of the life of the soil has come up so that it's healthy enough that, by all means, the manure is still a good thing to have. But that's not the only place the stuff grows now, because all the soils come up to a level that's livable. It's a very, very good indicator.
I had a question.
Sure.
Dry molasses and feed grade molasses, is that the same?
No, let me tell you what dry molasses, and I'll fight with my friend Howard Garrett all week about this. He sells dry molasses because he's got his picture on the bag, and he makes a quarter every time you buy it. I'm not knocking that. But dry molasses is rice hulls or wheat whey that has been soaked in molasses and allowed to dehydrate. And his sales pitch is, and I have to give him some credit for this, when you do that, you get the sugar, you get the carbon, but you also get the actual carbon material of whatever the carrier is, whether it's rice hulls, wheat hulls. And he's saying that synergistic relationship gives you more bang for your buck. But I'm telling you that a $3 a gallon of molasses put out probably gives you a heck of a lot more energy than a 50-pound bag of dry molasses. Now, having said that, sometimes it's easier to put dry molasses out. I actually have 100 pounds at home right now. But in general, I find that the best investment is feed grade molasses. Pleased that they haven't put an antifungal in it. A number of them are now putting antifungals in them to prevent them from adding containers so they feed them to the deer. I want fungus to grow where I live. I don't want to help kill it. So that you can get it from feed stores that are not treated with antifungals. And of course, Bear Rabbit and organics, if you want to spend the money. If you only got a little garden, it's just as easy to go to For Goodness Sakes. But if you're going to buy quantity, then you need to go to a feed mixer and buy it by the 5 or 10 gallon jug. You take your jug and they fill it up for you.
55-gallon drum.
55-gallon drums, even the better die. I happen to be using, who is this today? Oh, this is Maestro Grow, but it doesn't matter. If I had to sell you things besides molasses, the next thing would be what's in this. We're talking about seaweed, and we're talking about humic acids and molasses, and I would add fish to this, which I'll get to in a moment. I contend, and I've done this for years, that with compost tea and a good seaweed mix with seaweed and fish emulsion and some humic acids, I don't need anything else to grow a garden. It'll keep going and going and going. I like to keep the material in there and get my organic matter in. But I've been growing the garden for a long time in one place and experimenting. I have my own, which I don't promote, called Dooley's Own Natural Elixir. And it's basically this stuff, or it's Howard Garrett's juice, or whatever you want, with a few things added. And I do year after year, and my plants continue to grow very well. Growing vegetables and plants is not rocket science. You know, if it gets to be that hard to work, then maybe you're better off to buying it. It should be fun. I got a 600 square foot garden I'm working with, and I have fun with it. Once in a while the ducks get in and steal some stuff, and I throw rocks at them and they get away. But you should enjoy gardening. You should enjoy it whether you're even growing vegetables. I happen to have a personal thing. If I can't eat it, I don't grow it. I let Mother Nature grow all the flowers. They're everywhere along the road and all in the acreage that I cover. When I plant something, either I can eat it, or my birds can eat it, or my vulture can eat it. Something can eat it. And that's just a personal thing with me. Did I get this time? I keep pointing this the wrong way, don't I? Okay, I went the wrong way. I hate this thing. Hello. All right, we're gonna finally get there, now I gotta figure out. The other thing that I do think is very valuable is fish emulsions. I have some questions about the way they're made these days. There's some companies that are actually catching menhaden just to make fish emulsion. I don't agree with that. For years, all the fish emulsions that we got, or the fish hydrolysates, were made from parts that we didn't get to eat, parts we didn't make food out of. I have to question the wisdom of stripping our oceans just to make fertilizer to grow our plants to eat. It's not a very efficient system. I happen to know that Meister Grow and Neptune's Harvest is one I know that only use fishes, the remains of somebody that ate the fish or did something with the fish. So I would promote those names if you're going to use them. The other side of it is it's pure magic. Again, you put algae or seaweed on and fish emulsion on a regular basis, and I'm not telling you there's not much you can't grow. What we need to talk about in growing things is that you're really not a vegetable farmer or a rose grower or a banana grower. You're a farmer for microbes. If you get the soil to the health that it ought to be at, and that's a mixture of all the guys that need to be in there, I don't care what you're growing. Your plants will get a hold of what they need and they'll be very, very healthy. There's a few exceptions. In the case of mycorrhizae, brassicas, which is cabbage and things, don't really need mycorrhizae fungi. You're wasting your time to grow for them because they don't use it. But most every other plant we grow lives in this primordial soup of, do y'all realize in a teaspoon of soil, there's about 50 million living beings, if we have to have a better word, if it's a healthy soil. And when you use synthetic fertilizers, it doesn't sterilize it. My dad told me that. He wouldn't use synthetic fertilizer because it killed the soil. No, it doesn't. There's still a bunch of guys in there. But you know what's not in there? The diversity's not there. And you want diversity. It's just like, for those of you, I hope there's no real grass growers here. If all you're growing is coastal in your field, you're hurting your field. You're hurting your cows. You're hurting everybody. Coastal Bermuda as a monocrop is a monocrop, and Mother Nature doesn't do monos. If you go to a field full of grasses that Mother Nature put together, there's 20, 30, 40 grasses, dozens of forbs out there. And you know what? There's not very many fire ants. Fire ants love monocultures. We're monoculture growers. What is corn? The whole field's corn. Anything else grows up, we just kill it. I have people that kill all the broadleafs in their coastal because they say, well, if I make a bale and I don't, nobody will buy the coastal. But would you like to raise your kids on just McDonald's burgers? They'll survive. They'll get big and fat, but they're not very healthy. You need to have a salad bar out there for the animals you raise. It needs to be broadleafs and 20 different kinds of grasses and forbs and things coming up, and then the animals getting what you and I would get, and that's a variety of the food we need to survive on. Our society is very, very much suffering from that. Now, we can do this to the rest of the night. Don't forget to stop me when I need to. Compost and compost tea, I'm really hot on. Huh?
15 minutes.
Compost, if money was no object and there was no carbon involved, you can't do better than put 3 inches of compost on the whole 10,000 acres you've got. Unfortunately, it's economically unfeasible. You just can't do it. So the next best thing is to make compost tea from good compost. Why? Because I can cover 1/4 of an acre with 5 gallons of tea. And I can get all those microbes that would have been in all that compost on that 1/4 of an acre, very simply. Yes? You're not supposed to.
We're trying to let Galen sit over here.
Hi,
There's
Galen.
an empty chair, Galen.
Yeah, I've been sitting on that.
Oh, here you go,
You
guys.
know, this is fine.
Anyway, compost tea is very quick, very short, very inexpensive. Unfortunately, you have to do it pretty often. If I could get you to put 2 or 3 inches of compost on everything you grew, it'd last 3 to 5 years. If I get you to put compost tea on, it'll last 3 to 5 weeks, or maybe a few months. So you have to do it a lot more often. But it's very easy to do. And again, back to my friend Betsy Ross. She's been growing these fields of hers with her cattle now for, I guess it's coming on 9 years. She doesn't put compost out, but she put compost tea out about 3 to 7 times a year, along with my other favorite thing, molasses. And she absolutely does have some of the prettiest mixed grass fields that I've ever seen. That's all she does. Have you ever heard of the corn maze out in Hondo? He hasn't put an ounce of fertilizer out in 9 years. Not an ounce. And his corn's so tall you can't see it off the tractor. But he uses compost and compost tea and molasses on a regular basis. And that is his entire fertilization system. He does crop his corn but leaves all the stalks in place, so he's got all that organic material there. Okay, he doesn't plow. He's a no-till farmer. Okay, and what do we do when we till? We kill a lot of the good guys. The fungi and everything.
I heard that Bruce Drewley say the other day that.
That's me, yeah.
I mean, not Bruce, the guy in Austin.
That other guy, Gomgo. Yeah, he and I look a lot alike.
No, he uses, he said the water up there has chloramine or.
Chloramine, not chlorine, yes.
Right.
And so he has to use rainwater just to make the compost tea.
Yes.
The problem with compost tea is in the cities. He's right. A lot of us do just have chlorine, which will gas off. I guess the word's off gas, if you let it sit. Unfortunately, chloramine doesn't off gas, and at least 2 areas of the city of San Antonio are now using chloramine, not chlorine. To make
And New
your tea,
Braunfels does too.
chloramine
Yes.
sucks.
Yes.
Chloramine's a chemical that has to be chemically removed. I was in a class with Dr. Ingham, Eileen Ingham. She says even the chemicals that you use in the aquarium is really not still making the water near as good for bugs as, so I don't know how you fix that. I mean, if I tell you to use distilled water or rainwater to make it, but then you're gonna put it through a water hose that's throwing chloramine out there, that's sort of a bad situation. You're not doing yourself a lot of good. Now, I will admit, from the studies I've seen, you're not killing all the bugs, okay, but you're killing a lot of them. What do you think they put it in the water for? They think that sterile is the only way to go. Is there any doctors in here? Folks, I got news for you. Sterile is probably the worst thing we can do. You need to live in the world. The hygiene theory is what they call it. I always make fun, you need to let your kid sleep on the dog once in a while. Your kid needs to eat a little dirt. He needs to have a dirty diaper, stick his finger in his mouth once in a while. That's the way we've been doing for eons. And to think that we can sterilize our way through existence, pasteurized milk, homogenized, these bacterial soaps are more harm for you than they are good. Antibacterial soaps are stupid. And a lot of people are learning that. I was a nurse, and they bathed me in, was it betadine solution or something? Now, in that situation, I got to admit, I didn't want to poke my finger in this guy's eye that wasn't sterile. But I realized the betadine and the hexachlorophene, that's the one they took off the market, was damn near a danger to my own body. Being sterile is not a good idea. There's situations where I absolutely agree that it needs to be. But in most cases, you're better off with letting dirt exist. You're better off, like I said, with a dog in the house.
Well,
Yeah.
children that have pets, especially dogs, have fewer allergies, symptoms. than
Fewer
others.
allergies, fewer asthmas, fewer everything as they grow up. Your body is there to adjust itself.
Not true with cats, but definitely true with
No,
dogs.
Yeah. Am I going to get this right? You don't have to read any of this.
There's a little thing in this that when you hit it right, it's gonna change it.
What is compost tea? Compost tea is not compost leachate, let me tell you. You don't just put, and this is again, I'm going to pick on my buddy Howard, because if you go to his website today and he tells you how to make compost tea, he tells you to get a 5-gallon bucket, fill it 2/3 full of manure, let it sit 14 days and use the liquid. That's not compost tea. As a matter of fact, that might make a good weed killer if it goes anaerobic. You don't even want to do that. Compost tea is taking a small amount of compost in a liquid, aerating it properly so that you get a few bugs out of the compost, and then they multiply. Bacteria at 85 degrees, a number of them multiply about every 12 to 20 minutes. So imagine what you've got in 24 hours of brewing. You don't need to knock all those bugs off. You're not trying to leach all the bugs out of the manure or the compost. You're trying to get a inoculant so that your aerated water with molasses in it, or if you want fungi, fish hydrolysate, or oats, or wheat hulls, or whatever you're using, feed these guys and give you a great number in an overnight solution. That's all you're trying to do. That's what compost tea is. Again, Dr. Elaine Ingham has done studies. She's an it sounds like she was put in jail. She used to be a professor at University of Oregon and started her own business based around this. She is still the princess of compost, if there is anybody. She teaches, she's got places from Australia to New York to Europe. And I went and studied with her. I went to Oregon. She is convinced that if there's a simple way to re-inoculate the soils that we've sterilized, that compost tea is it. And so we'll go from there. I'll never get this straight. I'm not going to make you read that. I'm going to make you read, and I'll read one thought for you. And again, we're in a doctor's office. This is great. Food for thought. If a man has cancer, does he have cancer because of a lack of chemotherapy? Isn't that the way we think today? That's what we do in his body. Absolutely not. So it is with plants. Does a plant have a disease because of a lack of pesticides? Isn't that how we look at it? The plant gets sick. We don't say, wait, that's a symptom of a problem I need to cure. We just try to see what we can spray on it to fix the problem. Well, that's not addressing the problem. Okay? Healthy plants grow in soils that are vibrant and full of microbial life. One sentence, and then I could have done this and left in 2 minutes. Feed the soil and let the soil feed the plants. I don't care what you're growing. Think about what you're doing. Coffee grounds are wonderful in their own right. Everything organic. I always get embarrassed here, but I always tell you, I don't even have a toilet that flushes at my home. I use National Sanitation Foundation, USF approved or NSF approved composting toilets. I have 3 of them. Once you get used to them, you'll never have another flushing toilet on earth. Flushing toilets smell. My NSF tunnel doesn't smell at all. And all that goes where? Right where it came from, right back out on the earth. All my water goes to a little bitty ponded area I've got where I'm growing some palm trees, and actually I'm trying this year to grow some elephant ears to make my own poi. If you've ever eaten poi, it's the world's worst food. It's like you got to find something to do with it, but I want to grow some. And I'm putting it right back where it came from. And I'm not putting it in a septic system. I really question the wisdom of a septic system, where you take all this mess and put it in this primordial soup and expect it to be healthy somewhere down the road. You'd be way better off to take and put it out there in the sunshine. How long do you think it would be dangerous out in the UV of a bright sunny day?
12 minutes.
Yeah, 12, 15 minutes, it's sterile. But what we do is bury it in the ground and turn it into this disease-laden primordial soup, and then you wonder what the hell you do with it when it flows in the river and kills our fish. It doesn't make any sense to me. In that way, the Chinese are smarter than we think they are. Now, where's that? Point this in. Not the wrong way.
You point towards you, you go forward.
I'm going the wrong way. I am going the wrong way.
Backwards. Yeah.
Well, that's the end. I just want to stretch it out. No. These are just people. All I put here is, if you don't want to use, and I have no objection to manure-based, but there's a number of things like Texas tea, Bradfield, that are based, if you look on feather meal, alfalfa meal, there is no sludge and there's no manure in it. Now, I'm pro-manure. I have a manure problem. Come on, folks, I have a composting toilet. But there are fertilizers out there for those of you that want them that are not based on manures. And some people like to know that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about real fertilization. First of all, it doesn't take much. My wife has been growing her roses for 4 years, and the only thing she ever puts on them, ever, it's been a rule, is the water from our sink after we wash our dishes. It's got everything it needs. Come on, you live on it. The traces of the meat you ate, the traces of all the vegetables you ate. Of course, we do use Dr. Broner's peppermint soap, so we don't have any soap problems. But she's in her 3rd or 4th year. I'd have to ask her. of only watering this one whole bed of roses, of only fertilizing this one whole bed of roses with dishwater. What do you do with your dishwater? Isn't it going down the drain? Everybody? How many gallons do you think you use?
It's just me.
Think about that if you're going to grow a garden. In case you don't know, in Texas, my shower water is black water and I could be arrested for putting it on my lawn. Now wait a minute. That's the law. It's the real law here that if you put your shower water out on the lawn and they catch you, you can be fined. Well, I don't know what you're doing in the shower, but I don't think that water needs to be wasted in going into a septic system or going down our public drains in the New Braunfels or wherever you live's waterway. It's very ironic that I lived in the San Fernando Valley of California until they kicked me out. No, I just lived there for a time. And if you didn't divert your water to the grasses and to your garden, you paid an extra amount of tax. That included your shower, and that included your dishwasher and your washer and dryer. Didn't include they still thought also bathing was like dirty. The rest of it. When I came to Texas, I found out the only water you can legally divert, is from your your clothes washer and dryer. If you bathe dishes in it, then it must be dirty. If you bathed your body in it, it must be dirty. Certainly if it came out of your toilet.
Do they continue to do that in California?
Continue right now. You get a tax rebate for using gray water, which is what they call gray. The problem is the definition of gray water. Here everything's black. Black water means that it shouldn't go out on the ground. Gray water means that it can. Unfortunately, we don't think much is gray water. And I'm not sure where we got this wisdom from.
The AMA in Texas.
Who is it?
The AMA in Texas.
American Medical Association?
In Texas.
I don't quite understand that, regardless of who thought it ought to be there. My suggestion is that you get yourself a plumber and you divert all your water in your house out to your garden. The exception probably is your toilet. That might not make your neighbors very heavy. You know, they might not like it. I guess you realize in China, although it's probably outgrown it now, that virtually all the fertilizer they use is human. Almost 100%. And they don't get any more disease, probably less disease than we do. We've really gotten to this sanitization. Is that the right word?
1 minute.
Give me a word.
Sanitization.
Is that a word?
Yes.
I don't like that word. We sanitize our earth. Give me a break, folks. I guess, David, nobody in here has been to my house yet. Maybe Jason has. Have you been there yet?
Haven't been to Camp Dooley
You've
yet.
been Camp Dooley. We call it Camp Dooley for a reason. But I think we live a pretty healthy life. But we sure as hell are not sanitizing everything we do. I cook outside 320 days a year. Outside. I'm not talking about like, on the porch sometimes. And if my food sits out there a while, it just sits out there a while. And I can't remember. I was sick once because I poisoned myself 4 months ago. I got 30 more seconds. Let me finish this. I drank some microbes that were supposed to go into my septic system for my brother by accident. Really made me sick. I lost about 9 pounds. That's the last time I've been sick in about a decade. And I'm not a pill popper. I do take all my supplements. She and I talk about that. I wish that the vitamins and the minerals were all in the plants we need, but if you're buying commercial vegetables and fruits and meats, they're not. You really do need to get your supplements. If it were, she wouldn't have a job and we'd both be on the streets. But unfortunately, the place is really, we've really sucked it all out of everything we eat. Any questions? I'm done. He wants me to leave.
He's done. He's done.
Thank you,
Thank you, Bruce.